Terranigma, more than any other game I've played, leaves me confounded when it comes to putting my thoughts into words. I honestly don't know how to describe my experience and relationship with this game because every time I try, I contradict myself. I start down one trail of thought and then spin off into another that seems antithetical to the first. For example, it's clear that this game was built on a thematic bedrock. Every decision made stems from an unmistakable central vision, and that vision is mirrored and strengthened everywhere. Director Tomoyoshi Miyazaki knew precisely what he wanted to say and where he wanted to go, from the opening title sequence to the ending credits. And his guiding influence can be felt throughout the entire experience. His team was so in sync with this ideal and enthusiastic about executing on the concept that one can't help but be moved by their passion as it bleeds through the screen. Every detail feels lovingly handcrafted, and all of it is created in service to that foundational motif, that bedrock that grounds every aspect of the game into just the most beautiful message on Earth. At the same time, I can't tell you what that message is. Articulating what this game means to me is entirely beyond my linguistic skill. The theme that is Terranigma's beating heart is utterly intangible for me. I continue to grasp at it and come up empty-handed. It escapes me, no matter how long I sit and deliberate on every word I could use to define it, yet it's there. I can feel its potency so profoundly in my soul. How can that make sense? How can this game's thematic core be both a bedrock of intention and at the same time impossible to prescribe? I don't know. I honestly don't. But I promise both things are true at once. In interviews, the developers often used the word duality to describe it, and maybe that will mean something to you who's watching this. For me, it falls altogether short of properly illustrating what Terranigma is about. That word is like the first of 10,000 layers, the tip of a 3,500 square kilometer iceberg. It might be a good conversation starter, but it does very little to get us to the depth of what's really on offer here. At this point, I'm sure many of you who have played the game might be feeling confounded yourselves. After all, this is a Super Nintendo action RPG created with a young audience in mind. Its plot certainly isn't as complex as Terranigma's contemporaries of later generations would become. Its technical writing is basic and limited, even poorly translated at times. You might be asking what I'm going on about. Again, the words to explain what I feel escape me. So I have no choice but to fall back on comparison, as crude as it might be. We recently did an analysis of Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey for our Patreon supporters. During the course of my research for that episode, I was struck by the fact that Stanley Kubrick described the film as basically a visual, non-verbal experience that hits the viewer at an inner level of consciousness, just as music does or painting. This, in large part, is why the movie contains very little dialogue. He described it as an experience that shouldn't be intellectualized, for doing so misses the point. It's more of a spiritual experience, something meant to put us in touch with the unconscious self buried beneath our egos. I would argue that the same is true of Terranigma. Similarly, Denis Villeneuve, director of such films as Enemy, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and Dune Parts 1 and 2, went on the record saying, "I don't remember movies because of a good line. I remember movies because of a strong image. Pure image and sound. That is the power of cinema. The older I've gotten, the more I've come to agree with that sentiment, though I do still appreciate a good turn of phrase at the right moment. That said, I'm reminded of something that Roger Ebert said about 2001 in his 1997 review. The genius is not in how much Stanley Kubrick does in 2001: A Space Odyssey, but in how little. That is also true of Terranigma. While RPGs like Xenogears, which we've covered at length, are centered on cerebral and academic ideas that lend themselves well to secular discourse, Terranigma communicates its message through a feeling, through abstraction that speaks to the emotions rather than to the intellect. Yes, there's dialogue in Terranigma, and it's often silly and elementary in nature, but it's in the quiet moments, in the consequences of player choice, in beautiful landscapes, and in symbols that the real depth can be found. Terranigma's soul exists somewhere in the feeling generated by these contemplative moments and the lovely melodies accompanying them. There's a great quote by Tetsuya Takahashi on his approach to writing Xenogears. He said, "I know that in real life, if I spoke directly to a bunch of young people, they would never accept the message. So I use the story and the characters I've created to act as my spokespeople." He knew he wouldn't get anywhere if he tried to walk up to a group of kids and give dissertations on all the fascinating things he had learned about philosophy, psychology, and physics. So he disguised all of that in a shonen mecha anime video game to secure their interest and attention. I think the same is very true of Tomoyoshi Miyazaki and the team at Quintet when they made Terranigma. On the surface, things may seem basic or lacking in depth and complexity, but in reality, I've rarely encountered more depth in video games than Terranigma offers. I just can't explain it. So I invite you to join us as we begin our multi-episode deep dive into this game on our podcast. In the first episode, which will air on Wednesday next week, we'll cover the game's development history and introduce you to the creators behind this masterpiece. Afterward, we'll go through the story chapter by chapter in a book club format. For anyone who would like to join, we'd love to hear your personal interpretations and experiences with Terranigma. I'm sure we have just as much to learn from you as we could ever hope to share ourselves. See you next week.